Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Sylvia and I make videos on bookish and writerly things. Reading has always allowed me to escape into someone else's world. Writing allows me to disappear into my own world, and at the same time, both allow me to find myself. Join me as I experiment on how to best tackle projects, figure out how to stick with habit tracking, and celebrate the wins, both big and small. So grab a cup or a glass of whatevs, and let's get on with the video. Welcome back for another book discussion. My name is Sylvia, and today's book is My Throat an Open Grave by Tori Bovalina. If I butchered that, I apologize. This is a young adult horror and is part of my Random Reads series because it doesn't belong to a book club. According to the interweb, this is the summary that they gave. In the small town, hyper-religious town of Winston, Pennsylvania, Leah is an outcast. She's been taught to fear the Lord of the Woods, a shady figure who supposedly steals children. When her baby brother is taken, Leah is forced to venture into the woods to bargain for his return. The Lord of the Woods is not what she expects, and his price is a song that Leah has 1 month to write. This bargain uncovers dark secrets about Winston and its inhabitants, forcing Leah to question everything she's ever believed. It explores themes of religious oppression, trauma, and the power of self-discovery. Okay, let's get into it. So folklore is something you will find in every small town and every religion. It is something that, because it is passed down by word of mouth, you will get 3 or 6 versions of. I have experienced this myself, living in a small town, being Native American, and growing up on a reservation. This book starts out with a story about the Lord of the Woods. There seems to be, like with most folklore, a divide about exactly what the Lord of the Woods is. There is a nod to him being possibly a fairy. There's also an argument that there may be more than one Lord of the Woods. And this reminded me a little bit of Santa Claus. When children start to ask mommy, how does Santa deliver presents to every house all over the world? That's when parents start to make up more stories to try to clarify or explain away something that seems impossible. Children also like to fill in the gaps. Parents will start to talk about Santa's helpers or little elves, or maybe there's more than one Santa Claus, or therefore magic. When it comes to religion, we do get a lot of therefore God, which doesn't really explain anything. It just says, basically, because I said so. And this book dives a little into that. Our story gets started with a teenage girl named Leah who is at home watching her baby brother. And everything about it gave and screamed vibes of one of my childhood favorite movies, Labyrinth. So in Labyrinth, we have a teenage girl who's babysitting her half baby brother, and she hates this kid because he's always making her do stuff she doesn't want to, like come home early and babysit, and she just is very resentful, same as our main character. And so she decides to call the Goblin King to take him away. And the Goblin King comes, which she doesn't think he's real, and immediately she resents it. The Goblin King tells her that she has 24 hours to get through his labyrinth to get her brother back. And I really love how this author took that one aspect of one of my childhood favorite movies and kind of reimagined it into this book. I thought that was really great and well done. So Leah ends up putting Owen down, and the Lord of the Woods comes for him, leaves a bloody handprint. And when her mother gets home, she freaks out, and rightly so, but she starts to blame Leah like this is all her fault. And I'm just like, how is this her fault? So we end up getting the mother going to her church and to her pastor and telling them how her daughter is like this wicked child and that the Lord of the Woods has come for her baby and she wants the baby back. In order for them to get Owen back, Leah has to go into the woods and she has to bargain with the Lord of the Woods. So as this ritual is taking place and they mark her with a bloody handprint on her chest, she goes into the water, gets to the woods, meets a boy named Tristan, and Tristan says he can take her to the Lord of the Woods. Lo and behold, Tristan is the Lord of the Woods. He puts on some rings and some jewelry and then bam. And I'm like, okay, I'm here for this. So we start to learn that the Lord of the Woods is a lot younger and seems to be one person. But we learn that also his brother was the Lord of the Woods before him. We're not sure if he's a fairy, but he does have magical powers. Like there are things that are rotting around him and he gets rid of rot. just by touching them. There is a garden with a woman named Ruth, who basically is the memory keeper. She keeps the memories of all the people who have been there. The Lord of the Woods starts to talk to Leah, and she starts to learn that he's not what he seems, that he says and claims that he and his brother have never harmed anyone, that people choose not to stay here, and that they have all gone back, all of these girls. Well, what we've learned before this is no girl has ever come back from the woods, which was pretty shocking that Leah's mother would want her to go into the woods after Owen, knowing she could lose both of her children, but they do it to her anyway. And it was also pretty shocking that, as resentful as Leah is, that she decides to go into the woods instead of running away. I probably would have ran for the hills. So as the story goes on, we learn that Owen's being taking care of people that are not necessarily in the realm of the Lord of the Woods. They go to visit them, but they're kind of like more of a ghostly figure. The people can't see them. And Leah makes a bargain that she is going to write the Lord of the Woods a song, and she has 30 days to do this. And if she does this and it's accepted, she can get Owen and go home. But then something weird starts to happen. And this is the part of the book that I found was really interesting. She meets a ghost, which is technically, I think they might have called them echoes. It's something that's kind of left behind after people move on. And this echo's name is Maria, and she's from her town. Maria, she remembers, went into the woods to retrieve her son after he was kidnapped. But what we learn is the Lord of the Woods claims that he doesn't kidnap children. He only takes what is given. So this means that either someone out there is saying, hey, take these children from our town, or a specific person is saying, take these children on behalf of the mothers. Right away, I'm starting to think that Leah has chosen to have her son, Owen, which at this time we still think he's the brother, but I don't, because I'm pretty sure it's her son. She has called out to the Lord of the Woods to take her own child away, which makes her very selfish in some people's eyes, and could be a reason why she chose to go into the woods after him, because she felt some kind of regret. Through a series of events, we learn that Maria had earned the right to get her child back and go home. But before she got out of the river, she was held down by several hands. We don't get to see who these people are through a memory, but they did hold her down and drowned her, and there was a cord wrapped around her neck. After a while, Leah learns that Maria wasn't trying to ask her to solve her murder. She just wanted to show Leah that this was going to be her fate if she chose to go back. Then we get to Jess, who is a friend of Leah's. And I felt like her character was one of my favorites because she's kind of the hero, in my opinion. At some point, Leah runs away from the woods, but the 30 days are not up. She doesn't realize that she doesn't have like her physical body and that she's going to be seen in their world as a ghost. And she writes on a mirror when she gets to Jess's house, telling her that she needs help. Jess comes into the woods for her friend, which I thought was really great because Jess is a hero, but at the same time, because we started with a lot of the action right away, we don't have enough of the buildup of their friendship to know that this is something that Jess would actually do. Friendship can mean a lot of things, and so I felt like I would have liked there to be more of their friendship shown before she went into the woods, so it was a little bit more believable, because at this point what we know is everyone in this town claims that no one has ever come back from the woods. So why would you run in after your friend? I mean, wouldn't you think, I'm not going to get back? I feel like it's a death sentence. So that was a little bit of a, I'm not sure about this. But still, I really did love Jess. There were definitely some fantasy elements in this book, so it's not just straight up horror. There's also some romantic elements as well. I think every good book should have more than one genre within it. Overall, it should be definitely horror, and there's going to be those people that when they read a book about in the genre of horror, they're going to want that genre or those elements to shine the most. The fantasy elements were kind of cool. So what we have is the Lord of the Woods that is some type of magical being. He's not really human, even though he has a human form. He doesn't seem to really be alive, but he doesn't seem to be dead. He also has magical powers. And we know that he tells us the story about these bowls. So there are a set of 2 bowls, one that he has, and it fills with blood when he knows he has to go and retrieve someone. He tells Leah that there is another bowl that is in her world, and that bowl fills with blood when the girls choose to return to their home on the eve of their return. Now, when Jess goes into the woods and she finds Leah and she realizes she's not in any danger, Leah basically tells her, time moves differently here, and I've had some time to think, and I need to stay. I need to solve what's happening to all of these girls and why they're not coming back to our town. Because the book is kind of fast-paced, and I think it's only around 70,000 words, it doesn't really feel like much time has passed. So I feel like there could have been maybe a little bit of a better job in showing that, but we just kind of have to go by what they're saying. Between the 2 girls, they start to talk about what's really happening in their town and what's really happening to their friends. So there is this conversation about a girl named Sue, and Sue also had to go into the woods for her baby like Maria did. But it later came out that Sue had been sleeping with someone who was married, and I can't remember if he lived or just worked in another town. So with the information of the bowls and about this other man who was married, the girls put together this story that people in her town are getting rid of girls or getting rid of their aka sins by calling the Lord of the Woods on the girls' behalf to take away their child out of wedlock so that they won't get into trouble. So there's a lot of hypocritical stuff happening, which a lot of people will say does happen a lot in religion, where the women are getting punished, but the men are not. They're the ones that are calling and getting their babies offered up to the Lord of the Woods. And because the bowl fills with blood, they know exactly when the girls will arrive. So they put together this story to get not only the Lord of the Wood and his big wolf dog, I think his name is Wit, and I think that there was also, I know Maria was there, but maybe some other echoes, meaning ghosts, that come back with Leah when she decides to go back to town. Now, upon her return, the showdown starts in the river where Leah and everyone is ready for the men who are going to try to hold her down and drown her and wrap a cord around her neck. She lets go of Owen, knowing that Jess is going to be there and she is going to rescue him and get to her truck, which is parked nearby. And she makes sure that the cord does not get wrapped completely around her neck. These guys are not ready for this, and she learns that one of the main people behind this is Pastor Samuel. This showdown continues on in the church in front of people, where Leah walks in and takes this magical bowl full of blood and goes ahead and throws it and shatters it. Then Pastor Samuel, I believe, is dragged away by spirits or echoes, never to be seen again. Some of the things that happen in this book that I was really interested to hear from a younger perspective, like people who are actually considered young adults. I really couldn't find any videos as of right now. It is February 2025. There's only a handful of videos that are reviews on this specific book. A lot of people had this book in their most anticipated of 2024. I guess they just haven't got around to making the videos yet. But if you are somebody who is around the age of 18 and younger, I'd love to hear your opinions on some of these things that I questioned, or I kind of wondered what younger readers were thinking. The first is about the fact that Leah ended up having sex with a guy that she was seeing named Trent, and she ended up getting pregnant, and I believe he ended up dumping her, or they broke up soon after that. Then she talks to the Lord of the Wood about this, and it read to me kind of like she was saying, I've been taught that I am not going to be valued because I'm no longer a virgin, because I've had a child out of wedlock, and men are just not going to desire me, and I am nothing. That's sort of what it seemed like she was saying to me. And the Lord of the Wood responds by saying this is not true, but then also having sex with her. And I was like, it was a weird kind of awkward moment where I would argue that, more pagan beliefs would say that witches would go into the woods, all of those kind of like folklorish kind of things that witches would go into the woods, or naughty women would go into the woods to have sort of sex and weird mating rituals. Like that's what they seem to think the woods is about. It's kind of like a naughty, mysterious thing that is not religious. And I don't know that they proved that to be wrong, because here she is once again not really learning the lesson of maybe we shouldn't be having sex with people we haven't known very long. And I'm thinking to myself, like, is there some kind of magical contraception happening right now? Like, in my mind, this whole book is going to end, and if she wrote another one, she would be pregnant with a Lord of the Woods baby and right back where she started. But that's like my hot take on it. And I don't happen to be a prude, and I'm also an atheist. So this is not coming from any kind of judgment or religious thought at all. It just seemed kind of out of place and weird, and one of those moments where we were like, we're going to be kind of woke and talk a little bit about the new feminist or something. I didn't really understand. And that's what I thought. I didn't think it needed to be there or that it belonged there. It's kind of, I felt like the author talking to us and saying, it's okay to be sexually awakened or awake or something. And that was just like, okay. But I don't know. You let me know what you guys thought down below. The other thing that might be also a hot take, I don't know, was at the end of the book, I believe his name is Trent, who is the father of Owen. He comes by and he basically apologizes and says, I kind of thought that Owen was probably mine, but you never said, so I didn't come around a sniffing. And she's angry about this and bitter, and she has the absolute right to feel that way. But she basically tells him that we don't need you and no thanks. And I thought that was really disappointing, just because you're not the one who's going to raise him. At the end of the book, she leaves Owen with her mother, and her mother's going to raise Owen, which is fine. That's totally fine. But maybe the mother needs some help. My argument is kids are always going to be better off with two parents as long as the parents aren't crazy people. And at some point, that kid is going to grow up and wonder about his father. And if you get a chance to let that kid have a relationship with their dad, even if it's small, it might be important. It might allow him to see that his father was worthless and he never grew up and did anything good for him, and he can let that go. But not knowing can really kill a kid. And so I was really disappointed with that. Now, this is not any shade towards the author, because she's not, in my opinion, always like I mentioned, that one part with the sex thing seemed like maybe that was the author. But for the most part, I feel like she stayed true to who the characters are as characters, and is not inserting herself in any way. And that might be true of Leah's character and the sex thing. But it just seemed kind of odd. So I feel like, yeah, Leah would absolutely say, screw off. We don't want you. We don't need you. But I did feel like that was unfortunate as a person who's older and can see how that can be kind of hurtful. And so that doesn't change my feelings about the book at all. I still love the book, and I still would absolutely recommend this. Anyway, at the end of the book, after that happens, she sees Owen and her mother. It's been a while. At this point, she has gone back to school, gotten a job, lives on her own, still friends with Jess, and realizes that the people in Weston don't understand what she has done, the sacrifice she's gone through, so that no more girls will ever be sacrificed. She's the only girl to leave, and decides she's going to be the only girl to return because there's not a place for her here. And she decides to go back into the woods, which I thought, it's a choice, it's a total choice. But not every small town is the same. And at some point, being an adult who still lives in a small town, you grow up and you find out that it's as small as you want it to be. I have friends all over the world that I talk to and that are critique partners. I've never let the fact that I'm a writer in a small town get me down because there's no one to have, writing groups with or even book clubs with. I go out and I find people in the world. And so I was kind of bummed that she decided to go back into the woods, but she does. And Tristan, or the Lord of the Woods, is there waiting for her. And they decided to have that life together. And to me, I felt like, okay, so she's just going back into another small town, right? Because it's a small realm. And it's another religion. It's probably his, because there has to be some religious aspects to who he is and what he does. And I found that to be quite interesting. And again, if she ends up pregnant with the Lord of the Woods baby, well, then she's right where she left off, is she not? We don't know. But all in all, I thought it was a really cool book. I really liked the fantasy elements. And if they ever did write a sequel to this or make this into a series, I would really love to know more about those bowls that were enchanted and kind of how they were forged in the first place. I think that would be a really cool, interesting story, and maybe a little bit more about Tristan's brother, the Lord from before. I also think that comparing and contrasting Leah and Maria and their stories, and the way Leah chose to have her son taken by the Lord of the Wood, and Maria, who had a partner, I can't remember if we learned who he was or not, call the Lord of the Wood on her behalf and have her son, essentially, or her child, taken from her, was also a great, interesting contrast. And I think Leah was lying a lot to herself for a long time. Like, she didn't want to say out loud that she had her son taken, but the Lord of the Wood already knew, which I found to be interesting, because it's like, well, if you knew that she called, then why didn't you know these men were calling? And did you know exactly who they were? Did the pastor call on behalf of these men? Like, what's happening there? I don't know. We don't get that answer, but this was a great book, and I highly recommend it. I wish it was longer than 70,000 words. I appreciate that because it is horror, it probably had to stay shorter. If it was like fantasy horror, or what you would call that, fantasy with some horror elements, they would have allowed more room for those relationships to build. But I still feel like in the pages and the words we were given. Also, I wanted to point out that there is some symbolism in this book as well, especially with the red handprint on the chest. It took me a little time to get past that, only because of where my head is. I do live on a reservation and I am Native American. And so I was thinking of the red handprint as missing and murdered Indigenous women. And if you don't know the history of that, according to the website, it says the red hand symbolizes the connection between the physical world and the spiritual world. Native Americans believe that the dead can see red, so by wearing red, it invokes the help of our ancestors and spiritual guides. And so it took me a long time to get over seeing that and not thinking about missing and murdered Indigenous women. But when you do move past that, I started to think about one of my favorite classic books of all time, The Scarlet Letter, and how Hester Prynne is forced to wear the red scarlet A on her chest as a symbolism of her adultery. And so having that red handprint on Leah's chest was definitely not only a symbol to let him, the Lord of the Woods, know why she was there, it's also them marking her, which is also terrible and very, very dark and very interesting. But like I mentioned, I did really love the book and enjoy it, and I would highly recommend it. So I will not tell you what I'm going to be reading next. Usually I do at the end of these, because this is a random read, and yeah, it just depends on what I finish next. So, all right, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope that this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to read a book, write a book. Sincerely, Sylvia.